Biden has not done what he promised to do when it comes to Trump's immigration policies. In many ways, he's actually making certain aspects of them permanent. Um, People remember this is 2020 discourse, right? You can't criticize Biden because we have to get Biden in so that Biden can reverse the flow of all the damage that Trump's doing. And I still think that there. I don't think that it's the same thing in the general sense. But Lord in heaven, did that get overstated? Lord in heaven, was that a shield that was used to try to block legitimate criticism of the Democratic Party and what Biden's policies and practices have been in the past, and also people's very serious and now correctly, proven doubts about how committed Joe Biden was going to be to undoing the work of Donald Trump. When Biden was a candidate in 2020, he tweeted out, "Children should be released from ICE detention with their parents immediately. This is pretty simple, and I can't believe I have to say it. Families belong together." Biden is now going to be continuing the work of Donald Trump. Of course, as I said earlier, Biden is considering reinstating detention systems of migrant families. And yes, the nice version of it is that maybe they won't be separating kids from their mothers at the border, but putting them all in a cell together. That's the humanism there. But I want to talk about asylum, right? Because that's one that is just so simple when it comes down to it. Um, what's going on here? Joe Biden is continuing the Trump policies of restricting asylum. And let's not forget here that asylum is something that's very clear cut in American law. This is quote, US law, any alien physically present in the United States or at a land border or a port of entry, irrespective of such alien's status, can apply for asylum. That's it. Cut and dry. If you are coming to this country and you are claiming asylum, that has to be processed. We do not turn people away. That changed under Trump. Trump tried a bunch of different things. Many of them got caught up in court and then was finally successful with Title 42, one of the most cynical uses of the COVID-19 pandemic to be as barbarous as possible on our border. For people who don't remember, it's cooked up by the white nationalist Stephen Miller to basically say if migrants come into this country, they're going to spread COVID-19. So, because of the powers that the executive branch has to try to block a kind of health pandemic, we're going to supersede U.S. law on asylums, and we are basically going to be able to turn people away from that. Biden inherits this, says he doesn't like it, says he's going to get rid of it, slow rolls it. He gets gummed up in the courts, right? And never really put a head first attempt to try to break this brutal policy from being practiced in the U.S. Side note on COVID-19, remember COVID-19 is also what Greg Abbott is using to brutalize people on the border as well, right? And just as something that's very, it's just notable how effective COVID-19 has been utilized by the right and now by, inherited by Biden and utilized by people like Greg Abbott to brutalize people on the border. Greg Abbott doesn't give a shit about COVID-19. He never did. Right. In fact, the only time he brings it up now is to say that he wants to outlaw any kind of health practices from ever being utilized in the state of Texas, except for his emergency declaration act that gives him tremendous powers and leeway to basically subvert localities, to redirect funding. He's been utilizing, Operation Lone Star. If you don't know the term, that's what the name for his border operation is. He's been taking COVID-19 funding from the federal government that's been provided from the states to alleviate people's suffering and utilizing that to brutalize people on the U.S. border. Right. Trump did the same thing. Biden inherited, continues. Again, Biden has said time and time again, even last month, saying, I don't like Title 42, but going to continue to oversee that system, right? We can say whatever. Oh, the courts are making it difficult for him, right? It's not just Biden. Kristen Sinema, Mark Kelly, Joe Manchin, Raphael Warnock, and Maggie Hassan have joined Republicans to introduce bills to continue to preserve Title 42 policy, which again is a cynical and racist use of COVID-19 to subvert very clear, simple American law when it comes to asylum in this country, right? You're not going to get starry-eyed stuff from me on this kind of thing, but that's a very basic American tenet, is that if you are fleeing your country, you are welcome here, right? Probably one of the better traditions, even if it's been practiced in a brutal way, even if the United States is oftentimes responsible for the dislocation of people, right? It's like a kind of value that like you should want to see in a society, that you accept people who are fleeing hardship and difficulty and dangers to their lives and dangers to their family. But Biden turns his back on this, and certainly Trump did as well. So Title 14 is now set to end in May. But Joe Biden, not wanting to be attacked by the right, or maybe because he doesn't want to see more asylum seekers in the US, is effectively making is setting up a permanent asylum ban in this country, or making it much more difficult to get asylum in this country. And he's using that by outlining these new rules. So these new rules say that you need to apply for asylum where you are, and you do so, by the way, on a smartphone, an app. I couldn't imagine a more dystopian thing than the fact that Joe Biden, under his leadership right now, is saying there's an app for that. We're going to have people who are in poverty, who are running from dangerous conditions where they live. Again, oftentimes created by U.S. foreign policy, right? Or the privation of U.S. capital in those countries. You can get an app, and then you can be put on a waiting list. And you just got to hang out until maybe you get your turn, and you can have a meeting with CPB. The app has been riddled, as I don't think anyone is going to be surprised by, riddled with errors, difficulties. There's been particular difficulties with the facial recognition on the app, particularly with people who have complexions that are a little bit darker than mine. So people's faces aren't being recognized, booting them out of the app. They're just sort of stuck in this bureaucratic nightmare, right? Where we're denying our fundamental commitment. Again, something that is clearly laid out in US law. You have to go through the developer, hope that the app works, right? Nice. You have to stay where you are. Additionally, to basically making this app program be how we process asylum, capping the amount of asylum cases that we're accepting at any period of time. They are also implementing something that Trump implemented, which is called the transit ban, right? A transit ban means stay where you are, right? If you were in Honduras, if you're in El Salvador, if you're in Venezuela, you don't leave. And if you do come to the US southern border, the Biden administration is saying you have to go and apply at a country in between the United States and where your country of origin, right? Knowing full well that people, entering into El Salvador, entering into Nicaragua, entering into Honduras, and entering into Mexico are not going to be processed by those countries. Basically saying door shut to you, right? And this extends, to Cuba, right? This extends to, Venezuela. It's absolutely dystopian, brutal. This was a Trump policy that liberals rightfully said was wrong. They said this is inhumane, this is un-American, etc. But now Biden is not only, was he taking 3 years to deal with Title 42, again, an absolutely brutal dystopian law or this order. He's making a permanent system, right? Because Title 42 is going to expire in May, according to the Biden administration. And this is what will replace it, right? Which, again, is effectively a ban or a severe restriction on asylum seekers coming into this country, right? And as I said, I'll read it again just to be really clear. This is not my nice squishy interpretation of the law. This is the law. Hear it. What does it say? It says an alien physically present in the United States or at a land border or port of entry, irrespective of such alien status, can apply for asylum. But we're not doing that. We're putting people in queues where people are now getting stuck on the northern border of Mexico, on the Mexican side in difficult conditions with not, other than like NGOs and certain groups trying to help folks out, with very little resources to be able to get by, where they are preyed upon by cartels, they are preyed upon by traffickers, they're preyed upon by criminals, all while just sort of languishing away and hoping that they get a nice message on the fucking app that the Joe Biden administration has put out. An app, again, that is filled and riddled with issues. But even if the app wasn't faulty, what Biden is doing is an affront to the American asylum system that we have set up in this country. It is truly brutal. It is a very clear mirroring, mimicking of Trump policies that people thought were disgusting when Trump did it. And now Biden is doing it. And I want to be clear here because I think it's important to say, um, give credit where credit's due. It has not been the case that every member of the Democratic Party has been silent on this. It is not the case that even all the members of like the liberal media, if we want to call it that, right? Vox and things like that, have been silent on it. People have been critical of Biden, but it has certainly not boiled up to a major issue for a lot of people. A lot of people are very happy to look the other way when Joe Biden is continuing the policies of Donald J. Trump. And beyond this, and there has been already suffering under this system that is very, very young. Texas Monthly had a long piece about it, and they highlighted one young man from Cuba who was stuck in the northern border in Mexico, and while they were there waiting for their turn on the app, he was shot and killed. Right, so people have already died because of this policy. It is brutal. It is inhumane. Um, And then you also have the quote unquote like solutions, right? Which is Harris's. You all remember Kamala Harris. Do not come. Do not come. Their partnership for Central America, which is nothing. It's a grab bag for United States multinational corporations. That's what it is. It's not aid based, right? It's a grab bag for American multinational corporations, so that the United States, for the U.S. to sort of support their activities in countries that have already been ransacked by private international capital, um, along with just the long history of American imperialism, which has left a lot of these countries, extremely shaky. Right? There's a reason that people are fleeing, and remember too that like I think that sometimes when we talk about the asylum and the border crisis on this, remember that a lot of these people who are seeking asylum aren't coming from Mexico, aren't coming from Mexico, right? There's a whole other conversation to have about our relationship with Mexico and migration. Um, but a lot of these are people fleeing, Southern Central America, and countries like Venezuela and Cuba, right? So even on that level, I think it's just important to know that this crisis is something that is accelerated in the past decade, right? And we all know about the brutality that people have faced in recent years under Trump and in the early Biden administration. We also know what was happening in the 2010s during the Obama administration, and we know the long history of Central America and the U.S. role in destabilizing countries across the region. It's brutal. It's nasty. It's disgusting. And Joe Biden should not be able, to get away with this kind of thing. And I bring this up because I find it to be absolutely abhorrent. And I think that if you were upset about what Trump was doing, you should be very upset about what Joe Biden is doing. I also bring it up to talk about like election discourse, right? Because every fucking time these two parties put up one goal versus another, two people who want to maintain and manage the same system, you know, some of my friends, they make, and I understand why, and I get it. These arguments about like, okay, who's going to be the least worst option, right? And I get it. I get defensive voting. I understand it as a strategy. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong or it's not something that you should participate in. But this fucking cacophony of nonsense out here, that um, acting like these people are sort of wanting to manage and maintain the same kind of systems of brutality, is some kind of ultra position or wrong, or propagandized. You're seeing it play out right now. You're seeing the consequences, right? And you see it all across the board. You're seeing it with Biden and SNAP benefits in this country, right? You're seeing it with Medicaid. right? These people want to administer the same brutal system. And I'm tired of all of the excuses that people make to say the American people are too stupid to be able to listen to the arguments against, this brutality. I had some stuff from Beto that I wanted to play. Maybe I'll save that for another show in the near future. He had an interesting interview with David Axelrod that I'd like to play some of the stuff, maybe recap how he lost and some of the points that he made. But he made some interesting points about immigration. And one thing that I agree with him on actually is that when it comes to immigration, the Republicans have a very easy message, which they say, build the wall, right? Blah, blah, blah. Hateful, disgusting. Democrats tie themselves in knots trying to basically administer just slightly better versions of Republican policy because they don't want to be attacked for being soft on the border or being soft on immigration or whatever, right? And it doesn't matter politically for the Democrats because it doesn't matter. Like Joe Biden basically making permanent a form of Title 42 in the US is not going to win him any Republican votes. He's not going to go up against Donald Trump and say, well, actually, Donald Trump, I took a page out of your playbook and I'm also going to stop asylum seekers from coming to the United States, right? He's never going to win that. So the political argument of like, oh, this is cynical, but we're going to, basically this has to happen, right? Is nonsense. This is exactly the time to have some goddamn backbone and stand up and say, we're not going to do this anymore. So folks, I have to run because Matt and I have to record really quickly, but I'm gonna because I told folks I would. I might try to do a kind of rapid fire through any of these questions, see if I can get to any of them, but I might not be able to. Apologies, but I do these every week, so if I miss you this week, we can always do it again next one. Makogi, right, says, yeah, poor people driven away from home will just use the immigration app while they're waiting for their Grubhub. I know it's absolutely ridiculous, right? And even for the ones who do get access to it, it doesn't work. Let's see. And if folks want to, on another subject too, Matt and I had a pretty long discussion about Marianne Williamson and some of the questions and concerns, and also some of the defenses of that move. It's up for patrons now as our post game. You can access that left patreon.com/left reckoning. I was pretty proud of that conversation. I think we sort of worked through that fairly well. And I'm curious what people think. I haven't heard too much back yet, other than people saying it was excellent and the best thing they've ever heard. Yeah, folks. I mean, again, I would be happy to stay in chat. I usually do, but I know Matt's actually waiting for me right now, so we can record some other stuff. We'll be back this Sunday with a bonus episode. Next Tuesday, 6 Central. Remember, we're doing it at 6 Central from now on. Tuesday evenings. Appreciate all of y'all. Take care and look out for each other.